Hi everyone, it's Scott from Maths Logos, where we like to think about education through the lens of the Bible. In this lesson, we're going to look at converting fractions to decimals. So let's jump in. Our first questions say, convert the following fractions to decimals. And if you notice, each of these fractions has a power of 10 on its denominator. And these are what we call decimal fractions. So a fraction with a power of 10 on its denominator is a decimal fraction. And we can use place value to do each of these. In this fraction, we have 0 units. And we have 3/10. So we'll place the digit 3 in the tenths column. So 3/10 is literally 0.3, with 3 being in the tenths column. So our next example is 6/100. We have 0 in the units column, we have 0 in the tenths column, and we have 6 in the hundredths column. So 6 over 100 is equal to 0.06. Our next fraction is 24 over 100, and we could think of this as 20 hundredths add 4 hundredths. What we can do is we can simplify the 20 hundredths to 2/10 by dividing by 10 on the numerator and the denominator. And then we can turn that into a decimal using place value. So we have no units, we have 2/10, so we'll place the digit 2 in the tenths column, and we have 4 hundredths, like this. Last example, we have 7 thousandths, so we have no units, no tenths, no hundredths, but 7 thousandths. Pause the video and give these questions a go, and your answers will be on screen with full working out in a second. You can now check your answers against what's on screen. Okay, we're going to continue with more decimal fractions. So again, all of these fractions have a denominator, which is a power of 10. So let's have a look at 25 over 1,000. We could think of 25 over 1,000 as 20 over 1,000, add 5 over 1,000. And like we've seen in one of the previous examples on the last slide, we can simplify this fraction by dividing by 10 on the numerator and denominator. And what that gives me is 2 hundredths add 5 thousandths. And I can write that like this. So I have 2 hundredths and I have 5 thousandths. I can then turn that into a decimal. So I have no units, I have no tenths, but I have 2 hundredths. So I'll place the digit 2 in the hundredths column, and I have 5 thousandths, so I'll place the digit 5 in the thousandths column. But a slightly quicker way to do this question is to look at the denominator and know that I'm going to have to start placing my digits in the thousandths column. So I'll place the digit 5 in the thousandths column, and then I'll place the digit 2 in the hundredths column, a 0 in the tenths column, and a 0 in the units column. And I could get my answer that way just by pattern recognition. Next example, I'll show you in full, 253 over 1,000. So we could say that that is 200 thousandths and 50 thousandths and 3 thousandths. And like before, we could then simplify each of these fractions in turn. The 200 thousandths I could divide through by 100 on the numerator and denominator. That would leave me with 2/10. The 50 over 1,000 I could divide through by 10 on the numerator and denominator, giving me 5 hundredths. And the 3 thousandths I'll leave as it is. So after our simplification, we're left with 2/10, 5 hundredths, and 3 thousandths. And we can turn that into a decimal. We can say that that has 0 units. We have 2/10, so we'll place the digit 2 in the tenths column, we'll place the digit 5 in the hundredths column, and we'll place the digit 3 in the thousandths column. Our next example, I'll show you the place value way, but we could also just do 51 divided by 10 to give us 5.1. But I'll show you the place value way. We have 51 over 10, so we have 50 tenths, and we have 1/10. And again, I can simplify this fraction 50 over 10 by dividing through by 10. Of course, 50 divided by 10 is 5, which is the same as 5 over 1. And then I have my tenth on the end. So this would be equal to 5 add 1/10. And this time I do have some units. So 51 over 10 is equal to 5 in the units column. And I have 1/10, so I need to put the digit 1 in the tenths column. That's my answer. Of course, you could have just got there by doing 51 divided by 10. Our next example, 4,059 divided by 100. So of course, like we've seen in the previous example, I could simply divide through by 100, and that would give me 40.59. But let's look at it in terms of place value. I have 4,000 hundredths and 50 hundredths, and then 9 hundredths. And let's simplify each of these fractions. I can divide through by 100 on the numerator and denominator. That leaves me with 40. And I can divide through by 10 on the numerator and denominator of this fraction. That leaves me with 5/10. And the 9 hundredths I'll leave as it is. So this gives me 40 units, 5/10, and 9 hundredths. I'm running out of room over here, so I'll have to write over here. I have 40, and I have 5 tenths, so I'll put the digit 5 in the tenths column, and I have 9 hundredths, so I'll put the digit 9 in the hundredths column. Pause the video and give these questions a go, and your answers will be on screen in a second. Check your work against the answers on screen. If you're following along in our lesson booklets, you can now complete exercise 1, and if you're enjoying this video, please consider dropping the video a like and subscribing to the channel. Thank you. Alright, let's look at our next examples. We need to convert these from fractions to decimals, and the difference this time is our fractions are not decimal fractions. The denominators are not a power of 10. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to convert these fractions into decimal fractions. I want to essentially change the denominator so that it's a power of 10. Well, if I multiply 5 by 2, that would take me to 10. And I, of course, need to multiply my numerator by 2 as well, so that I create an equivalent fraction. Let's go ahead and do that. 2 multiplied by 2 is 4, and 5 multiplied by 2 is 10. So I can say that 2 fifths is equal to 4 tenths. I've created an equivalent fraction. And because I now have a decimal fraction, I can use place value like we were doing in the previous examples. 4 tenths is 0.4. Our next example, we have 1 3/4. So this would be equal to 1 add 3/4. And I'm going to look at this 3/4 part off to the side. I want to turn 3/4 into a decimal fraction. And if I multiply 4 by 25, that would take me to 100. And of course, I need to multiply my numerator by 25 as well. 3 multiplied by 25, this is one of these facts that we need to know. That's 75. And 4 multiplied by 25 is 100. So I've turned 3/4 into a decimal fraction, and I can now simply use place value. I can say that 3/4 is equal to 0.75. So coming back to our 1 3/4, we know that 1 3/4 is the same as 1 add 0.75, and that gives us 1.75 as our decimal. Pause the video and give these questions a go, and then your answers will be on screen like in the previous examples. Here are your answers with the working out. You can check if you got them right. Okay, we have some more examples where our fractions are not decimal fractions and we need to turn them into decimal fractions. Let's look at our first one. It's 6 25ths, and I can scale 25 up to 100 by multiplying by 4. So I need to multiply this entire fraction by 4 on the numerator and on the denominator. 6 multiplied by 4 is 24, and 25 multiplied by 4 is 100. Now it's a decimal fraction, I can use place value. 24 over 100 is 0.24. Next example is 7 50ths. Again, I can go up to 100, that's the nearest power of 10. I can do 7 multiplied by 2 to give me 14, and I can do 50 multiplied by 2 to give me 100. This is what we call a decimal fraction because the denominator is a power of 10, and I can then just use place value. I have a decimal 0.14. Pause the video and give those two a go, and then your answers will be on screen right after. Check your work against the answers on screen. Okay, our next example says convert the following fractions to decimals, and it gives us 6 200ths. Now what I could do is I could multiply by 5 over 5, and that would scale me up to thousandths. So that would work because 200 times 5 is 1,000. What I could also do is I could actually scale the 200 down to 100. I could divide the fraction by 2 on the numerator and on the denominator. 6 divided by 2 is 3, and 200 divided by 2 is 100. So I don't necessarily have to scale up to the nearest power of 10, I can also scale it down to the nearest power of 10 if that's a good way to do it. Now that we have our decimal fraction, we'll use place value. 3 hundredths, I simply place the digit 3 in the hundredths column. Next example, 7 fifths. I'm going to convert this fraction into a power of 10. I can scale the 5 up to 10 by multiplying by 2. I'll do 7 multiplied by 2 to give me 14, and I'll do 5 multiplied by 2 to give me 10. And this fraction is 10 tenths, or 1, and 4 tenths, like this. Like we just said, 10 over 10 is 1, and 4 tenths is 0.4. So my overall decimal is 1.4. Pause the video and give those two questions a go, and then your answers will be on screen. And there are your answers. If you're following in our lesson booklets, you can now complete exercises 2 and 3. Thank you for watching this video.